Okay, we here. Class is in session. Today we're talking about how you can tell if you're dealing with somebody who's mentally ill and how you can tell if you personally are mentally ill. Because you would think that it's real simple, but the thing is, if you personally are mentally ill, you might not be able to recognize that you are, and you might think that it's other people who are really tripping, and you might not be able to identify that it's you. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain this in a way for you to be able to better identify if yourself or someone else whom you're dealing with is going through something. Now, first of all, I have to explain to you what a mental illness is and what I mean by that. So, when I'm talking mental, I mean something that has to do with your mind. Okay, that's pretty simple, mental. All right. So, an illness is an impairment of your normal psychological functions. So, when I'm talking about your mental illness, it's your normal, or what would be considered normal, psychological functions being impaired. So, now that we got that out of the way, let's get right into it. Click the thumbs up button if you like this video, and make sure to share and subscribe if you like this video and like more content like this, and support this channel and join this community that we're getting started. All right, so if you have a lot of loved ones who have suggested to you that you might need to go to therapy, or not even necessarily a lot of loved ones, but if at least one person whom you know you can trust and who you gotten close to, if they've told you, all right, so back to what I was saying. If a loved one has told you that you need to go to therapy, at least one person, and say you quickly denied it, that goes to show right there that you haven't even considered that something could potentially be wrong with you. Now, a sane person would go, okay, am I crazy? Or not necessarily crazy, but am I ill? Am I being abnormal? Am I having an impairment of my psychological functions? And it would take somebody who's able to kill their ego, at least temporarily, in order to be able to acknowledge if they are actually going through something. And then there's a saying in psychology, just in case you didn't know, I've got a degree in psychology. I just don't like to fling it around. But yeah, I'm a psychologist. So there's a saying in psychology that the first step towards eliminating a problem is acknowledging that you have a problem. But a lot of the time, people aren't able to easily identify or come to terms with the fact that something is wrong with them. And that's why a lot of people don't heal themselves. And just so you know, there's multiple different kinds of disorders that you could have in psychology. You could have a mood disorder, you could have an anxiety disorder, a personality disorder, an eating disorder, substance abuse, and you could even have a trauma-related type of disorder, like say PTSD or something like that. But there are many different categories that you could put somebody's mental illness in. Some are temporary, and some could last a lifetime. But personally, I believe that all of them can be at least relieved or cured. Okay? So, obviously, with the spirituality aspect of it, that is the cure for all of this stuff. All right, so to continue on, if you find yourself continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again, that might be a sign that you might be mentally ill. Because the way it's supposed to go is you don't know better, you make a mistake, you learn your lesson, you move forward, and you no longer make that mistake again. Now, it would show that you're irresponsible, or should I say, underdeveloped, immature, even if you're not able to identify the problem that you have as far as what you did wrong, and then soon after eliminate that characteristic. Because all this is supposed to be about character building. So if I make this mistake once, just to give a good example of one of the psychological disorders, if it's substance abuse, and every time I get upset, or not even every time, it doesn't even have to be a constant thing, but if it's something that I do, for example, if I'm really upset and I go binge drink, and I just start drinking a lot of alcohol in order to try to escape my problem, whatever it might be, whatever it is that's bothering me. If I do that even once, there's something wrong with my psychology. That is a clear sign that something's wrong with your psychology if you go and resort to substances in order to try to cope with your whatever it is that you're dealing with. Now, you don't even necessarily have to have a real deal disorder or a diagnosis in order for something to be going on as far as mental illness. Because, like I told you, mental illness can be seasonal, temporary, or what have you. Sometimes people have a seasonal depression, but if it continues to come back, that's when it becomes a disorder, and you might be able to be diagnosed. Just so you know, it's called a dysthymia if you have a continuing depression that always comes back, even if you get out of it. If you just can't seem to stay out of a depression and you just always slip back into it, that's called a dysthymia. There's a lot of different forms of depression and whatnot, but I could go on a whole video just talking about each one of these specific categories. But continuing on with how you can tell if you are personally mentally ill, if you're overindulging, like I said, that's a sign that something is wrong and you're not acknowledging what is wrong because you're trying to resort to utilizing whatever it is, substance wise or what have you, in order for you to try to escape it. A lot of people do this with eating. They'll try to overeat and stuff themselves and distract themselves, or they'll binge watch a TV show to try to escape their own mind, or drinking. I mean, it could be so many different things. Smoking is a really big one. A lot of people, they'll try to utilize marijuana in a way, and they won't acknowledge that they can very easily become dependent on that, and that is another form of escapism. A lot of people use different forms of depressants and whatnot to try to eliminate their issues, but the thing is, if you never acknowledge what's wrong with you, you're never going to solve the problems. So an easy way to identify that something's wrong with you is if you're trying to always escape the problems, or should I say ignore the problems and distract yourself from them, and you're always trying to distract yourself, and you haven't very maturely acknowledged this is what's wrong with me and this is the plan that I have to make sure that I eliminate it. That's another thing, man, because a lot of people, they for some reason, psychologically, whenever somebody's going through something, they'll try to escape it when the escaping it isn't the thing that you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to eliminate the problem. Now, there's many different things that could be wrong or whatever, but you got to remember that another one of the ways that people have these issues, even if they do get to the point that, okay, yeah, I'm acknowledging something's wrong with me. If you're able to acknowledge that something's wrong with you, that's one thing. But another one of the ways that people, and maybe even you, don't acknowledge the entirety of the issue, because you might be blaming others for what's wrong with you. You ever heard somebody say something like, you made me this way, or you caused this, you made me like this, stuff like that? That's a sign that somebody is mentally ill also, because ultimately there may have been something that somebody did to you that triggered your issues. Yeah, that's possible, absolutely. But the thing is, if you're allowing yourself to stay in that condition, and all you're doing is basically having a pity party and telling other people that they're the issue, you're harming yourself because you're holding yourself back. So I think that's a really toxic characteristic for somebody to have, if they blame other people for their bad actions or their lack of emotional stability or psychological stability. So you gotta make sure that if something is wrong with you and you can acknowledge it, you should acknowledge where it came from, but don't linger on to the past, because a lot of the issue is that people will continue to remind themselves of the past instead of acknowledging it one good time and eliminating the issue, so that you can get to the point where it's like, okay, now I remember that trigger, I experienced that trauma, I've acknowledged that trauma, and I've eliminated that trauma. That's what it has to be. But that is not very easily done, and that's why sometimes people suggest, hey, maybe you should go to a professional, maybe you should go to counseling or therapy or a psychiatrist. There's nothing wrong with going to get help. That's the thing, man. Like, everybody needs help from someone, somewhere, at some point in their life. Probably multiple points in their life. You wouldn't have even gotten this far in life without having somebody to take care of you, because you literally wouldn't have even been able to get very far in life. As far as your baby stages, if you were a baby, you literally would die if you don't have somebody else's body heat to keep you warm and somebody else to nourish you and nurture you as far as your emotional and your physical needs food wise, because you can't feed yourself when you're a child. You don't know how to go get food or any of that stuff. You don't even know how to chew because you don't even have teeth yet. So just consider that it's okay to need help. Everybody needs help. So don't look at it like it's you're weak or something if you do need to just go get the help that you need, because it's very irresponsible and you would be doing yourself a disservice if you don't go get that help, because that could cause a lot of negativity to continue to live that simply didn't have to. All you had to do is go to a counselor a couple times, maybe a few more. I mean, and just find out their perspective on it, because you can't, a lot of the time people can't realistically acknowledge what's going on with them because they have a bias, because, well, duh, it's you. You're going to be biased because it's you. And a lot of people's egos are too big to acknowledge what's wrong with them and help themselves feel better about it, because their ego is in the way and they're not able to just eliminate the problems. So just do your best with that. If you don't have the courage to go to a counselor quite yet, go to your closest friend and specifically ask them, what are my weakest characteristics? Ask them, what are my weaknesses? And make sure they're being honest with you. If you don't have that friend, you have that friend. You just might not know it. You got somebody who will be brutally honest with you. You do. Everybody has somebody in their life who's willing to be 100% real with them. And if you don't, if you really don't think you have that, go to the person that you've revealed the most to about in your life. So whoever knows the most about you, just go to them. Whether it be a family member or, heck, sometimes even a stranger. You could go up to a stranger and just give them a little breakdown of what's going on. You ever heard the saying like penny for your thoughts, or you giving your 2 cents? Sometimes people used to, back in the day before everybody had contact with each other through the internet, people used to literally just go up to people like, hey, I got a couple pennies here. Can you just tell me what you think about this? And just go up to them, give them some spare change, and just have a conversation with them and listen to what they have to say. That could go a very long way. And in a way, you're kind of making a deposit into the universe. So that could actually help for a lot of more money to flow back into you. But when it comes to attracting money, that's another video for another time. So just continuing on with being able to tell what's wrong with people a lot of the time, and how you could tell what's wrong with you. Like I said, you can make the same mistakes over and over again. You're getting your own way. Being in denial about what's wrong with you is a very big thing. So if somebody's trying to tell you, hey, something's wrong with you, like you need help, and you're like, no, 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 something's wrong with you, and you're getting all defensive and easily triggered, that's an easy sign that something probably is wrong with you. And mental illness is that. Like, so if you find yourself to be easily triggered when somebody does acknowledge your mental health state, know that there's probably something wrong. To continue on though, I just got a couple more. You got to make sure that more than anything else, if you make false narratives about what happened in your life, you're at another level of traumatized. So if you went through something and you never really acknowledged truly what happened, and there's what we call delusions that some people go through in order to deal with the traumas that they've experienced, where somebody could literally pretend like they experienced something that they didn't experience. Now, I've experienced this firsthand with somebody that I've been close to, where anytime that they went through something that they didn't like in their life, they would literally create a false narrative about what really happened, and they'll come up with this entire fallacy in their mind of all of these things that never even truly happened that way. Now, if you're on that level, I highly recommend that you do go ahead and go to a professional. That's a little more serious, and with a lot of these, it's pretty easy for, I could say, considering the fact that I don't know your personal problems, it normally would be pretty easy to eliminate these problems if you're able to talk them out with somebody you're close to. But if you're at the point where you're not even sure what's real and what's not, you're definitely in need of a professional. So maybe just go up to somebody, that close person that I was talking about who knows you well, go up to them and ask them, have I ever come up with false narratives in my life about things that happened? Do you remember at any point where I was making things up? when it comes to something that wasn't a pleasant experience for me. So that could go a long way. I don't want to make this video too long, but of course, when it comes to the topic of suicide, I made a video on that. It's called How and Why People Die. I'll put it in the cards. But if you're having suicidal thoughts and you're having a lot of ideas, or should I say, you're starting to be more creative with your ideas of how dying might feel, or how people might respond to finding out that something happened to you, whether it just be something negative in general, like an injury, or you harming yourself, or going as far as suicide. Yeah, I highly recommend that you either call the suicide prevention hotline, or you, like I said, once again, go to a professional, a psychology professional, because they are here, we are here to help you all. Now, this has just been a quick video helping with this. You can actually apply this to yourself and then look at it from another perspective of who you're dealing with, and seeing if these different descriptions are able to be identified with whoever you're dealing with also. But don't be the first to point the finger, because anytime you point the finger, there's 3 more pointed back at you. So first of all, acknowledge if something's wrong with you. Clean your own house first, and then go start talking about somebody else who needs to clean up theirs. Have a great one, guys. Till next time.